Welcome back, everyone. About a month ago, in the comments, some folks asked to see how I shoot my videos, sort of what my process is and how I'm mounting cameras and how I'm using cameras. And I thought about it for a while. I didn't think it was going to be that exciting, but the more I thought about it, I was like, this could actually help people. As I do free stroke analysis, one of the things that people struggle with is getting video of themselves. And this is an easy way to do that, is to mount a camera on your boat, and then you've got it. So we're going to talk about the cameras that I use all the time, the cameras that I use sometimes, the cameras that I use sparingly, and the piece of GoPro gear that is an actual piece of garbage. I hate it, but I have to use it. Let's go. Okay, I should preface this by saying that before I was an outdoor educator, I worked in emergency medicine. I was a paramedic and I was an EMT before that, which is why I teach wilderness medicine now, because it was natural. Before that, I worked in photography, and before that, I worked in the film industry. I made like TV commercials. I worked in the production end, but I made TV commercials and music videos and one TV series and some documentaries is the sort of stuff I worked on. So my real background is in photography and film. So this actually comes pretty easily to me. And one of the things that drew me to working with GoPro cameras, which is primarily what I use, is just how small they are and how flexible they are in terms of usability. Really, really, really love that. A lot of people hate on GoPro, and I'm gonna hate on something from GoPro later. GoPro is not all that great, but it's pretty amazing in terms of what it can do and the changes I've seen in cameras in my lifetime. The two primary cameras that I use, one that I'm shooting with right now, and one that's down here, are a pair of GoPro Heroes. My primary camera is a Hero 10. My secondary camera, or my bow camera, as I think about it, is a Hero 9. If you've been with me for a long time, there was a period where I had huge problems with my Hero 9 in terms of the way that it recorded audio. And I use this camera, but I don't rely on the audio because the audio is unreliable. It gets crackly and poppy and things like that. But if you dig back deep into my history, you will hear the audio pops from this camera, and it's horrible. I have worked with DJI cameras. I used the original DJI Action, which was good, but it was missing one feature that I use a lot that I'll get to in a minute. So these are my two primary cameras. I have a nose camera and I have a camera on a GorillaPod. The camera on the GorillaPod literally lives right up here with its legs under the bungees. My bilge pump and paddle float would be right here. Sometimes there's a deck bag here, which it would just be then on top of. This gives me the ability to shoot forward if I want to, or primarily what I'm doing is shooting back at me. And then having these two cameras like this, so one on the nose and one right in front of the cockpit, gives me the ability to switch from the close camera to the wide camera and back to the close camera. Super convenient. I use that all the time. I don't use any fancy software to sync the audio with the other clip. I just sort of do it manually. It's relatively easy. The other thing that this gives me the ability to do is to move this camera and get shots along the side, shots behind me, shots looking forward, shots looking up. Because it's so close, I have that ability to aim it wherever I want, whereas the camera on the nose is locked in position. These are my two primary cameras, and I use them 99% of the time. I'm using these two cameras. I then have two other cameras that I use to sort of pad things out. The other camera that I use, as I said, to sort of pad things out, is generally mounted to the back of the boat where it is right now, and it's a 360 camera. And that 360 camera, I don't use that often. It's got a very specific sort of 360 look. I use it when I know that I'm gonna be seeing something interesting. Big water, big wind, big waves, or something really beautiful. I'll throw that on for a third perspective. And this gives me, again, the ability to cut between different shots to keep things interesting. Because here is the thing. No one wants to watch a video that is shot entirely from one perspective. I don't care how cool the thing you're doing is, unless you're jumping off a building with a parachute, you need multiple views, and even those folks are now doing multiple views. There's one more camera that I use really sparingly. The last camera that I use, and as I said, I use it sparingly, is a drone. I use it to set up shots and sort of tell people where I am. I generally don't use it while I'm paddling. I think I've only done that once or twice. As I work alone, it's really hard to manage. The final piece of gear that I use, which is pretty big and extremely important, believe it or not, is this right here. I use the DJI wireless microphones. Audio is very important. These work amazingly well. As I said, wireless, tiny. They come in a box that recharges them. It actually comes with 2 microphones and a transmitter. The transmitter is, of course, right now on the camera. Now it's recording both. Super nice system, and whenever you put it back in the box, it recharges them. They also have the ability to just record onto themselves, which is a little bit more work. I would rather feed it into the camera. But those are the big pieces of gear. 4 cameras and a wireless microphone system. There's some smaller pieces of gear that I use that are mandatory, necessary, but problematic. The first is something that I'm using right now that you can't see, and it's the GoPro Media Mod. The GoPro Media Mod is designed so that you can attach things to the camera. It gives me the ability to attach the wireless microphone receiver to the camera and then plug in a way to plug the receiver into the camera so that it's recording the audio from my microphone at the same time that it's recording video. The problem is that the Media Mod is a complete piece of junk. Now, as I said, I'm not like a GoPro hater, but this thing is poorly designed. It uses the standard GoPro thumb screw to secure the camera, but due to the shape of the Media Mod, it's really hard to turn the thumb screw. The connection for the Media Mod goes, you have to remove the battery door, and then it plugs a USB-C, like a fixed USB-C plug, into the slot under the battery. The problem is, about 30% of the time, it just refuses to connect. And in fact, while I was setting this up, it wouldn't connect to the Media Mod. So literally in getting ready to shoot this, the Media Mod has stopped connecting to the camera. And I've turned it on and off like 4 times to try and see if it'll register. It's still not seeing it. I have to now take this whole thing apart, take it apart, reseat it, and hope that fixes the problem. That's what a big piece of junk this thing is. The other problem that it does is, right now, it's receiving audio from this microphone, but the Media Mod has its own microphones. Sometimes it will just turn off the audio from this microphone and use the Media Mod microphones, and the Media Mod microphones are actually worse than the microphones built into the camera itself. So this is what the Media Mod sounds like without the DJI mic. And then here in the same situation, this is the DJI mic through the Media Mod. Like if it turned off this microphone and switched to the onboard microphone in the camera itself, that wouldn't be as horrible. But the Media Mod microphones are tinny and horrible. I despise the Media Mod, and I'm working on a couple of ways to get around its usage. I have to use something to connect the microphone to the camera because it won't do it via Bluetooth, which it really should. The latest version of the GoPro will connect to Apple AirPods and other Bluetooth earphones that you can then use as a microphone, but it won't connect to the DJI mic. Use the Media Mod all the time. I would say it works 70% of the time. Yeah, that's not good. Here's some other gear that I use. Another piece of gear that I use pretty frequently is this. This is the GoPro Max Lens Mod, and it'll work on either camera, but I actually use it on the older camera more often. And what it does is you remove this lens cover and attach this one and it gives you the ability to have horizon lock, which the cameras do horizon leveling, but it'll do horizon lock all the way around, which is super nice when I'm rolling the boat or even when I just pick up the boat. It keeps the horizon where it should be. Super, super nice feature. I really like this. The only problem with this thing, it's prone to scratches. You have to be very careful with it. Okay, that's the primary gear that I use. But yeah, there's always more. So this is my original low pro drone case from when I had a much bigger drone. It is very beaten up, but when I sold the drone, I kept this and it has become my bag for everything. So we'll talk about this a little bit later. This is the case that goes into my kayak when I'm paddling with the stuff I'm going to need for that day. This is all of the audio gear with the DJI mics and all the accessories and the media mod. This is the GoPro chesty, which I don't really use that much, and the GoPro wrist mount, which I don't use that much. I will occasionally use the suction cup mount. Here's a head mount I don't really use. This is nothing but GoPro accessories. So quick releases, a big bar mount. This is a special aluminum mount that I can strap to something like a telephone pole. And then a million of these things which you use to secure your GoPro. Of course, the drone is in here. And then here's the drone controller. And then some other little stuff. This is a paddle mount for the GoPro. The floaty hand grippy mount, which I don't really use that often. Sticky mounts, which we'll talk about later. And then I've got some stuff that I don't use that often. These are adapters for getting data onto my iPad. This is another audio system that I used to use, a microphone. A lavalier mic is in here as well, and then it would record to this digital audio recorder. I don't use those that often. Stickies, we'll get to those. I always have those around. And then we'll talk about this in a second. But what's really important is these two things. These are super useful. Okay, so these two plates used to be when you bought a GoPro camera, the camera would be on this plate in the top of the box with a plastic dome over it. So you could see the camera and then all the accessories were under it. And most people would just throw these away, but these are awesome mounts. At some point they made them smaller to make the box smaller. And I kept both of them and I'll show you why. So this is how this GoPro would be in the box when you buy it. And it works on its own really well. It can be like a little tripod on a table or on the floor, but primarily I use it like this. And stick it under bungees, and I can put it any place that there are bungees on the boat. This thing is sensational. I've also taped this thing to cars. I've taped this thing to walls. It is sensational, and most people throw them away. Okay, so that's all the gear. And there's a fair amount of it, but there's still sort of two parts to this. Part one is, how do I get, or what do I bring with me when I'm going paddling? And part two is, how do I actually use it when I'm paddling? Let's talk about that. Okay, so before I get on the water, I figure out what it is I'm going to need. I don't bring that big camera bag. I bring this waterproof case, which will have in it extra batteries, the lens mod, any sort of adapters I think I might need, as well as a lanyard so I don't lose my camera, which I rarely use, and at some point I'll lose my camera. I did lose one GoPro once stand-up paddleboarding doing a battery change, but yeah, I need to use that more often. So this will go with me, and sometimes it'll go in a dry bag, sometimes it'll go on its own. This is very old and is probably just water resistant at this point, but that's primarily what I'm bringing, and I'm not bringing any of the microphones because, as I said, the media mod makes the camera not waterproof. Okay, so that's what I'm bringing with me, but how am I connecting things to the boat? And it's actually really simple. You've already seen the Gorilla Pod under the bungees is primary, but I also have GoPro mounts that are stickied to the boat in a number of places. There's one up here on the bow. There's one up here on the day hat, which honestly I rarely use. And then there's the 360 mount back here, which again, I don't use that often, but I've got it if I need it. But that's the bulk of what I'm using and how I'm mounting. It's very straightforward, it's very reproducible. And those mounts, like up here, you could get one of those for, I think, 10 bucks. They come in a 6-pack. And then it's super easy to mount your GoPro so that you can see what it looks like when you're paddling, what your stroke is really looking like. That is, without a doubt, the second best way to get a really good forward stroke. The best way is to then put it on YouTube for everyone in the world to critique exactly what you're doing. Another piece of gear that I've got that I use sparingly, but when I use it is super cool, is this thing. This is an egg timer that's flat on the top with a sticky mount. And so I can mount the camera on it in time-lapse mode, and as time ticks down, the whole top of it spins. So it's really nice for time lapses. And then when you hit the end of your time lapse, it tells you. How cool is that? It's just an egg timer with a sticky mount. Sticky mounts are awesome. Use sticky mounts. This is actually a surfboard sticky mount because it was white. It was white. It's now kind of yellow. I use that for van shots, and it's super nice. I've got one here on the nose and one on the opposite corner up high. So it just gives me the ability to do different camera angles while I'm driving and things like that. The biggest problem is that you've got to like stop and set things up, but you've got to take that time to move cameras around and get different shots. Otherwise, it's just boring. So something that I forgot to mention that really makes this system work fluidly is the voice control. So with the camera mounted all the way out on the bow, I obviously can't reach it to turn it on and off. But usually, if it's not too windy, it can hear me, and I can control both cameras with my voice, both on and off at the same time, like this. GoPro, stop recording. The other nice thing about the wireless mic is it gives me the ability to do a walk and talk like that, which is super fun. I don't do it that often, but it's fun to be able to do that. And to not be chained to holding a camera. Cool, so that's the gear I use, that's how I use it. If you have questions, please leave a comment down below. While you're playing around down there, do me a favor, hit like, hit subscribe. We're working our way towards 7,000 subscribers this year, and I've got a long way to go. So help me out and hit subscribe, that would be awesome. Go use an action cam and a sticky mount to get some cool footage of you out there paddling. And otherwise, I'll see you on the water.